like to call to order the Wednesday, March 13th, 2019 Chaska Planning Commission meeting. Can we have the roll call, please, Liz?
Bovee. Here. Cross. Here. Pfeiffer. Urbanski. Seiler.
Here.
Lacey.
Here.
Brass.
Here.
Olson. And Chairperson Dahlke.
Here. All right, next, can we'd like to adopt the agenda for tonight.
Move to adopt the agenda.
I'll second it.
Motion by Bovee, second by Cross. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, now is the time for visitor presentation for anything that's not already on the agenda for tonight. And it looks like we don't have any extra presentations, so we will move forward with approving the draft for last month's Planning Commission meeting minutes from February 13th, 2019.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Second it.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we don't have anything on the consent agenda tonight, so we're going to go right to the action items. So first action item 7A is to approve the concept plan for the Hazel View Senior Cooperative. So Liz, it's all yours.
Thank you. All right, thank you, members of the Planning Commission. We have a concept plan before you tonight for the Hazelview Senior Cooperative residential facility. So to give you an idea where the site is located, it's highlighted in blue on this aerial, but it's specifically located on the southeast corner of the intersection of Pioneer Trail and Hunter Mark Road. It is abutting the Pioneer Point development, which is to the south of it. The Hazeltine Golf Course is just to the north. We have Chaska Commons, that is kitty corner to the site. And then we have Wings Financial and Super Target off to the west of this property. So in terms of a background of this site in particular, it was only in May and July of 2000 that the Pioneer Point development was approved. So that's that townhome development just to the south of this property. So the subject site that we're looking at tonight, also known as the Fred Malnow property, did hold off on development as a part of that Pioneer Point development during that time, as they had different desires in terms of how they wanted to develop the property. They wanted to do some commercial on that, which staff was not supportive of, but either way they decided not to move forward with the development of that property. Therefore it has sat there for some years now in terms of being vacant. So tonight we're looking at finally the development of that into a senior facility. The developers or applicants did conduct a neighborhood meeting with the Pioneer Point development to the south of them just last year in June. Basically wanted to run a couple of ideas past them to get their initial feedback on, and specifically looking at the potential of utilizing the existing accesses of Pioneer Point to the south to access their site. And basically the conclusion of that meeting came with Pioneer Point not being favorable of having access through their site. So when I say access points, there are some stub streets on the southern side within the Pioneer Point development that during the time that this residential development went through, there was an indication that those might stub through to provide access to this site. But now that they're coming forward with a different development plan, they did want to get kind of an initial reaction from the Pioneer Point residential organization down there to kind of gain an understanding of whether or not they would allow access through their site, which they did not. This is the site forces exhibit that was put together by the applicant, just to give you kind of an overall analysis of the surrounding area, which I've kind of already gone over. So in terms of the exact characteristics of this site, in terms of acreage, it's about 2.7 acres in size. It does have a triangular shape to it, so it does start to taper off towards the east of it, making it a little bit more difficult in terms of where the buildable area is for this site. It is currently vacant, however, it does have a pretty significant scattering of trees on the site, which they did provide a tree inventory exhibit as a part of this concept plan, kind of indicating where those trees are located. And I'll kind of get into the specifics of that a little bit later. So they have 2 street frontages, one on Pioneer Trail as well as one on Hunter Mark Road. And with that, there's also 2 public trails that dissect this site that run parallel with both those major roads. These will basically remain in place as they're being shown with the exception of the trail that's on the north side. They do plan to realign that. And then another major characteristic that's a part of this property is that there is a drainage swale that basically dissects this property within its center point from north to south, which also throws in another challenging aspect to the development of the site. So specifically what they're requesting as a part of this concept plan request is the construction of a new senior housing cooperative building, which would be catered to individuals that are 62 years and older. So the way a cooperative works, it's much like a condo, but the people who are buying into it are basically buying into an equal share of the property, which includes the building, the common areas, and the land around it. So that's how it kind of sets itself apart from your typical condo building. In terms of what they're proposing for the use out there, it is consistent with our comprehensive plan, which guides this to be medium density residential. So getting into the site plan that they have proposed here, they are showing, based on the feedback that they've gotten from the Pioneer Point development to the south, but also the feedback that they received from Carver County, basically denying them access on Pioneer Trail. They basically reacted to that by showing an access onto Hunter Mark Road, just on its southerly boundary there, which would provide access into the site, into the surface parking lot that they have there, as well as their underground parking lot underneath the building. So with this new access point onto one of our major roads, and it being closer to one of our major intersections, we will require that they put together a traffic report as a part of their preliminary submittal so that we can understand the impacts of this development in terms of traffic generation and so forth. As you can see, the building and the parking lot are very much shifted to the west side of this property. Given that the east side is very skewed, there's not a lot of buildable room there, so there's really only one obvious spot on the property to put both these pieces in order to provide enough setbacks and enough parking for the site. So as they were kind of looking at the layout options out here, this seemed to be the most logical for them in terms of how much buildable area that they do get out there. They are trying to maintain that sight line triangle on this northwest corner of the site so that this intersection doesn't remain or remains non-hazardous for people driving within that intersection. And because of kind of the skewed nature of this property and its pretty strict limitations, they are asking for a reduction from the Pioneer Trail centerline setback requirement as a part of this proposal. And kind of based on our initial analysis and reaction to that reduction, it does seem to be a reasonable request given kind of the constraints that they're dealing with on this property. For us, we want to make sure that if they are asking for a reduction, that there's not any major hazards being created as a part of that, specifically with the traffic. So again, just from first analysis of this layout, we feel that they're doing everything that they can to keep that sight line open on that corner, which is very important for us as we're analyzing that. Like I've stated, they've got parking above ground but also underground. So in total, they're providing 50 parking stalls as a part of that, which definitely exceeds the ordinance requirements for this type of housing. So I think they're at least 2 times over what they actually need out there. And because of the location of the parking and the close proximity of Pioneer Point, it will be an important item of consideration during the preliminary plan is how they plan to screen the parking lot as well as the driveway area into the underground parking lot from the Pioneer Point development, so that this doesn't become an additional issue for the residents to the south. In terms of pedestrian connections, so they are showing connections into the existing trails that exist out there on this site plan. So that's definitely a plus for the users of this site to be able to gain access to those major pedestrian systems. They are proposing an outdoor recreational area for the residents to use on this eastern side, which again is another logical location for them to locate such an amenity. I think, you know, as we start to move forward into the preliminary, one big component for multifamily residential uses is that they provide usable open spaces for their developments that the residents can use. The big ticket items on that is, you know, how are these being used? How are they unique? How does it set it apart from other facilities within the area? How are they allowing the residents to find those amenities on site versus trying to find them somewhere else? So we've kind of indicated a couple unique provisions that they can look into providing, such as rooftop amenities, much like what they did at Lake Jonathan Flats. Getting more usable items in there like fire pits and grills, tables, and so forth that really bring people outside and want to use those spaces. So again, that's something that we'll continue to work with the applicant on as they start to hone in on what they're providing out here. Tree preservation is a pretty important topic with this site given the existence of scatterings or clusters of trees out there. So I did try to provide kind of a marked up exhibit indicating where those significant oaks and maples are on this site. So I did circle those in black on this tree inventory exhibit that was provided. But again, given kind of this limiting constraints of the site, tree preservation is going to have to be logical with kind of what they're proposing for the site plan. So we've indicated some areas that will definitely be able to be preserved on the east side, potentially a significant oak tree on the north side, and then on the west side as well, to see where they can really optimize those tree preservation efforts. As I noted before, they are planning to realign the public trail that's on the north side to be closer to Pioneer Trail. We have looked at this with our Public Works Director as well as staff to determine whether or not that seems to be a logical change out there. And from kind of the drainage issues that are already occurring within this area, they're going to have to impact it regardless. And getting the trail closer to the roadway, but still providing an adequate buffer in between the road and the trail is the ideal solution out there. So the realignment will affect a cluster out there. However, these are only cottonwoods and box alders, so not necessarily the most desirable species of trees. So with that new realignment, staff is favorable of that change. In terms of the building architecture out there, they are proposing a 4-story building. It'll have 37 dwelling units within it. The overall footprint has more of a skewed U-shaped type footprint, which in terms of a layout, we're definitely favorable of that, as we like to see articulation not only in the overall facade, but also the shape of the building. So they are achieving that quite well with what they're proposing. The materials proposed are glass, brick, lap and shake siding out of fiber cement material. So just as they're continuing to move forward, we just emphasize the need and requirement to meet our building design and materials ordinance for multifamily residential, as well as 360-degree architecture, which doesn't seem to be an issue here with what they're proposing. And then one other point in terms of kind of the profile of the building and looking at amenity opportunities is looking at whether or not a pitched or flat roof is the most appropriate way of developing this building. We've seen with flat roofs that you have the opportunity for rooftop amenities, but not only that, it also does shave off some height as well from the building. So keeping that in mind as we're moving forward and understanding the spatial relationship and scale relationship with Pioneer Point to the south, as those are 2-story townhomes. So again, how do those two different masses relate to each other within that area? They did provide a rendering of another prototype that they did in Wisconsin, which it'll be very similar to what they're proposing as a part of this project. However, this one's only showing 3 stories. The project they're proposing is a 4-story building, but in terms of kind of the overall look, this is pretty similar to that. So just to reiterate some items for them to work on as they gear up for the preliminary submittal. So with the building design, looking at the potential of a pitch versus flat roof idea and seeing where that can open the doors for additional amenities for the site. In terms of tree preservation, we did make a note of eliminating their westerly underground parking access into the building to open up some more area for tree preservation efforts. So we'll have them look into that a little bit further as they come back for their next submittal. And then in terms of landscaping, the southern property line is definitely going to be a sensitive area in terms of providing adequate screening from the parking lot and driveway areas from Pioneer Point. In terms of traffic, we'll obviously need to see more information on that and how the new access is going to work onto Hunter Mark Road through a traffic report. And then with the usable open space and amenities, we'll definitely want to see a detailed summary of the amenities that they're proposing with this project, both indoor and outdoor, as well as seeing how they can really bolster those usable open space pieces as well, kind of as we've indicated before with certain elements. But all in all, the concept plan was pretty well put together for this stage of the process. So we are asking you to make a recommendation of approval of the concept plan for Hazel View Senior Cooperative based on the conditions that are listed within your staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions, otherwise the applicants are here as well.
Okay, I think questions for Liz first.
I don't know if it's really for Liz. I'm kind of against putting too many more amenities. My mother was in a co-op, and the thing about the co-op is that fee changes as you add more things. And this is a small co-op, it's only 37. So having something on the roof means a taller elevator, A fire pit, I have nothing against, but I really think that has to be looked at because we have a variety of rental, but a reasonable variety of rental will include something that doesn't have real high fees for the co-op. So I'm there, I've said it.
Okay, thank you.
No, I think the plan is really well put together for the kind of the restrictions that they're under, and specifically speaking to how the access doesn't line up with the access across Hunter Mark.
Yeah.
At certain times of the day, I know that's a pretty busy in and out, and one would have to assume that the residents and visitors of this proposed development would want to cross that street to get into that access, and that probably creates a dangerous situation, depending on how the traffic report comes back. But it's too bad that the development to the south isn't allowing access on the road that lines up with that crossing across Hunter Mark to the west.
Yeah, I'll reinforce that. I think my only concern is the access that's not aligned. Because I think for the most part, it'll probably be fine, but there are going to be periods where people coming from that development just want to get to Target, and they're going to be doing a diagonal.
Right.
So I guess it would be nice to see what the traffic report says. And I do agree with removing the westerly garage access. I can see why you'd want that, so you don't have to drive through the parking lot to get to the other access. And the reason why I would be for that, not only for the trees, is because of that unaligned intersection. If you have you have traffic coming and you have someone coming out of there as well, I potentially could see problems arising there. Otherwise, I do think it looks like a great concept.
And to clarify, the garage is underground, so
Yes.
these accesses, as they're drawing, you're going down grade
Yes,
to get.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that probably works really well, keeping the access to the garage on the east
On the
side
east.
based on how the land is sloping down there for the drainage.
Yeah, and one comment to point out on kind of why they have two access points is they have angled parking in the underground parking garage. So basically, it allows for one-way movement and one-way movement out.
I see.
But something that we definitely can look at a little bit more, I mean, they have parking stalls to work with in terms of whether or not we can kind of work around that for that piece of things, so.
My question was related directly to parking too. There are 37 units here and only 50 stalls, so are we to assume that most residents have one vehicle?
Basically, I mean, since this is a senior housing facility, they don't have, I mean, typically they don't have more than one vehicle
Okay.
per unit.
And then obviously some residents won't get a stall underground, and I'm sure that correlates with whatever their purchase price is, but,
Right.
okay.
So again, this is a cooperative situation.
Yes, yep. Alright.
Anything
Any other
else for Liz?
questions for me? Otherwise, we can open it up for the applicant to come up.
Great.
If the applicants would like to come forward and provide any additional information, or
Sure.
tell us who you are and where you're
You
from,
bet.
please.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, my name is Perry Ryan with Lake West Development, 14525 Highway 7 in Minnetonka. I want to thank Liz and Kevin. The staff did a great job, and I don't have a lot of stuff to add to it. Just a couple little items and maybe answer a couple questions that the commissioners have already come up with. One of the things to point out kind of on the first page of the staff report that was done, yeah, it is a challenging site. It does taper off to the east there. But with that, and with, I think, the way that we've placed it, the building footprint is about 17,000 square foot, and the parking's 14,000. We're only really utilizing about 74%, we're leaving 74% of green space on the site, so I think that's important to note. Since we just talked about the access issues to the underground parking, I'll speak to that a little bit. As Liz mentioned at the end, that it is on purpose. It is a one-way operation. There is diagonal parking underneath, and for everybody's use, but especially maybe on the age-restricted use, it does make it a lot easier for them in and out. And so those traffic movements, both on the east side going in are one-way, and on the west side coming out are one-way. Understand certainly the importance of those trees on the west side, and we'll take a look at that, and maybe there's some movements we can do and some retaining we can do, but we would love to be able to keep that. It works out well. I'm gonna invite a partner of ours on the development team from Bradford Development to come up and speak to some of their existing co-op sites. Just to answer Commissioner Cross on the amenities, we would agree with you. I mean, sometimes some of these places get so over-amenitized. The rooftop does add a lot of money, but we are open to, we talked about in the narrative a really passive kind of a trail system over to the east, but to add fire pits and some benches. They usually, in the developments that Bradford's done, we did provide a list to staff, and I'll let Ms. Nelson speak to that. Sometimes provide some raised gardens out there as well. So a couple other items. Again, we'll review the trees with staff on those areas that Liz pointed out as having some higher priority maples and oaks, and so we look forward to going forward to the next stage. And I'd like to invite Ms. Nelson up with Bradford Development, who's on our development team, to just talk briefly about kind of the amenities that we do have planned for the units, and just give you a little brief overview on that as well.
Hi there, my name is Melissa Nelson. I'm with Bradford Development, and we are in Mankato, Minnesota. We have developed 4 cooperatives prior to this. We started with our first one in Mankato, which is a 52-unit senior housing cooperative. That one opened in 2006, and I was able to manage that cooperative for the first 3 years that it opened, and then get back into the development. So I've kind of got the full circle of the cooperative and understanding of it. From there, we went to Northfield, and we developed a 51-unit senior housing cooperative, and Winona has a 38-unit, and then we were in Wisconsin, most recently in Black River Falls, Wisconsin, with a 27-unit senior housing cooperative. More specifics on this type of building with the 4 stories. It'll have a large community room with a full kitchen and big outdoor deck for the members. There's usually a library, a hobby room, all underground parking, a workshop. There's some extra storage space down there. In Wisconsin, most recently, they requested a pub be put in as one of their community rooms. That's one of the things I kind of wanted to run off of your comment with the extra outdoor amenities. Typically, we'll team up with the members who want this to be their home, and it really becomes a team effort to see what they want, what are their hobbies, what are their interests, what will they use, and not putting in so many amenities that it's gonna, put that price point higher than what it needs to be. So my counterpart, Brad Bass, he's not here today, but it's basically just him and I that do the cooperative development. There's a fitness area, outdoor gardens. Those are some other common areas. Like someone mentioned earlier, that's very similar to condominium, but one aspect that I really see a difference of is the lifestyle, that there's a lot more community interaction and participation, and just the socialization aspect of it it's huge for folks that are kind of early retirees. They're not quite ready. Basically, they're done with home maintenance. They're just tired of the upkeep and want to get something that they can manage easier, shut the door and travel, not have the upkeep and all those types of concerns overhead. I guess I'll just kind of open it up to see what you guys have for questions for me on co-ops or Bradford Development.
Can you speak to the parking a little bit, since you've managed even some co-ops? And
Sure. Well, we've definitely done buildings both ways. It all depends on the lie of the land. We prefer the drive-through garage. The members definitely, it's just easier to navigate through there when you've got the angled parking to be able to come in one way and out the other. But with the buildings that we have done the one way, we've usually had to expand, make them a little bit wider just so that when they're backing and turning around in there to go back out the same way that they came, that they've got those additional feet to work with. But both are doable.
But as far as the number of stalls and, you know, does a typical resident have more than one vehicle?
Yep, the majority of the people living in the co-ops have one vehicle.
Okay.
Well, what about visitor parking?
Yeah.
Visitor, the outdoor spaces, we'll have to, you know, kind of crunch those numbers, I think, again. But yeah, definitely the majority of them are single vehicle owners. And we also run into the case where over those winter months, you know, if you have a handful of snowbirds that are gone, they generally open up their parking stall in the garage to their neighbor, and they just kind of, they have that neighborly camaraderie, and it works out pretty well.
I have one question, excuse me. Maybe, given that no one in the room here is a senior, it means a lot of things to a lot of people. Maybe you could help us with your age profile that you see in these units, because I think, you know, us looking forward, you know, we think senior must mean 95 and older, or maybe even older than that. I'm looking at you. And so maybe help us with that, because I think that helps us probably understand a little bit about the direction on amenity packages and things like that as well. I mean, if this is 55 versus 85, I think some of those things really help us understand kind of the target market, helps us understand maybe the parking a little bit better, some of those pieces. So if you could address for us kind of the age profile you see in there, or that you're anticipating here, I think that would be helpful, or restrictions that you might have.
Yep, sure, great. So the average age that I see of folks moving into co-ops is about 74. Most recently, I am getting a lot more people around the 65 age category that are, again, just done with the maintenance and they're ready to have an easier route. So I think it is leaning towards a little bit younger population, but you'll also get a handful of people that may be in their 90s and active, and they don't need any of, you know, the services that a lot of times comes with a facility like this. So it keeps, you know, their price point down. They don't need the meals. They don't need those extra activity of daily living services type things. So yeah, it's about 74. Did I answer all that, or was there more to that?
No, I
Okay.
think that serves to help us.
Okay,
I have a question.
yes.
So on a co-op, do you have rules on, like, you know, if grandkids come and visit?
Yeah.
Do they not get to stay overnight, or is it different depending on the group, or the co-op, or how does that work?
Yeah, so as the developer, we put together a set of house rules, basically, and they're very common sense type neighborly with
like
pet policy and
bylaws or?
bylaws too. Yep. That'll, because it's a cooperative corporation. But those are just suggested that they move forward with those house rules. But once we sell out the units and we step out of the project, the building is owned and operated by the members that live in it. So they have complete control to change anything that we recommend going in, but very lenient as far as, you know, grandkids and people love to hear the little footsteps and see the smiling faces in most cases. That's one thing you'll find with these two is just like-minded people. You know, they remember that old bowling alley years ago, and so they have camaraderie there, and they're all in the similar stage of their life, and they have similar interests, and they like it quiet by 8 o'clock at night, and They keep the building immaculate, you know, from the moment you walk into the door, it's their home. And so they respect it. They want people coming and who are visiting respecting it. So that's another big difference I've seen between other multifamily housing.
Now,
Yeah.
do you all develop it and then you turn it over to the co-op? Who manages the building?
Yep, so what we'll do is we'll set them up with a management company. Yep, we pretty much put everything in place so that when the doors open and folks are moving in, that they can hit the ground running, and really there isn't any worries. There's the management company with a couple of employees on site to handle the day-to-day operations, and then the members form a board of directors and committees under that to make all the other decisions to operate.
I'm familiar with co-ops, only what I hear on TV, and mostly about it's located in New York. And
Okay.
co-op boards can be pretty brutal, and when you're developing it and filling it, I'm sure your bylaws are very lenient because you want to get full occupancy. Based on your experience, how much has that changed once you turn the building over and a co-op takes the reins as far as providing access, accepting new residents if someone's moving, and how much guidance do you give in maintaining, I'm sure, a very lenient process, you know, when you're filling the building?
So one thing that's really important to mention is in all of our co-ops, we've always used a HUD-insured mortgage. And so it's under the HUD Section 213. And they are very, very strict as far as bylaws and all the legal documents and their processes as far as not allowing renters, everything, basically, because they're insuring the mortgage on the property. They're making sure they're doing annual maintenance checks. If there's light bulbs out, you're cited for it. We cross our T's and dot our I's, and it generally stays that way going forward. The management company offers very good guidance for the board of directors and then the on-site staff. So there's generally not a lot of variance from when we turn it over to 10, 20 years down the road.
So once a person qualifies financially, that it?
Yeah, well, we have to qualify them by age and income. So HUD requires 62 plus, so that's the minimum age. At least one occupant or spouse of a dwelling unit needs to be at least 62. And then there's minimum income requirements that they set that we have to qualify folks from. And it's basically based off of that monthly fee and their age and their other assets.
What's been the history in your buildings in terms of ramping up once you open the doors? Is it, do you open with 50% occupancy and take, a year to fill up, or what's your history?
Yep, so typically what we've been seeing is we'll sell a third on the front end prior to construction, a third during construction, and about the last third after construction, once
Okay,
it's
that's
complete.
Do you have approximate price point already, or?
Yeah, we have, they're very estimated numbers. We're kind of estimating high with our interest rate right now because it might take a year before we lock a mortgage or whatnot, but buy-in prices may range from around $110,000 up to roughly maybe $160,000. So then they are a shareholder within the Cooperative Corporation. They own a membership share certificate, which is like a deed to a home, and that can be resold when they decide to leave the cooperative.
1 and 2 bedrooms?
Yep, most of them are 2-bedroom, 2-bath units. Just 3 of them are actually just a 1-bedroom with an optional den layout within them. And then the square footages range from like 1,058 square feet is the smallest one, up to just under 1,500 square feet on the larger one.
It's a good size.
Good price point too, I think. It's nice to have varied product in the
It
community.
is a good price
so-
point, and I like the idea of the cooperative, because especially with the age group, I think it gives a sense of pride to owning not just your unit, but you own a little piece of the whole thing. So like you said, people tend to take care of their things better, like the hallways and the grounds and the maintenance, versus, well, I don't own the hallway, I don't really care about it, kind of thing. So the mentality is different, so I do like that.
All right,
Anything else? All right, thank you.
thank you, appreciate it. So, this is a public hearing, right? No?
You can open it up to the public to comment.
Pardon?
You can open it up to the public to comment.
Yeah. So, is there anybody that wants to present it or comment to the planning commission before we bring it back to the commission? Looks like not. So we'll bring it back to the group here, and is there any additional input you guys want to make before we?
I just had a
Make
quick
a motion?
question, Liz. So I was not prior, here for the meeting with the residents to the south, the Point residents. How adamant was the access not coming through the neighborhood? I mean, was it a pretty contentious thing? I mean, that's my only concern is it not lining up, the two access points?
Sure. One of the things to point out, that was back in June of last year
Yep.
that we had that. At that point, it was a different concept. I think we were looking at a potential Montessori school or a daycare. And
Oh, it's a different use
a
entirely?
little different use, yeah. But the access was the main issue. And it was coming off of two of those access points. And it was fairly adamant. I mean, we do, I understand going through, I think the access that we're showing right now is better. I just wanted to make one comment about the little bit of an offset. One of the things that we pointed out on the traffic use, of course, is way less than a single-family residential. And
Clearly, yeah.
And clearly, even you and I, or those of us that have, a full-time 8-to-5 job, if we don't have to drive during rush hour, we would choose not to drive during rush hour. So we find that in the traffic patterns as well in the 62-plus community, that if they know it's busy out there at 7:30 in the morning, and they have a choice, they're not gonna go there at 7:30 in the morning. So it's not quite the same traffic pattern as you would think if this was a market rate condo or apartment. And so I think that works to our advantage, and I hope that we'll see that on the traffic study as well.
Fair enough.
Since this is a totally different use than when you had the meeting last summer, I mean, it seems to me that this would be quite a bit less traffic
Than a Montessori.
than a school,
Yeah.
because
Drop off.
a lot of traffic at one time and,
Sure.
a couple times a day. Is it worthwhile approaching the neighborhood again to see if that access could,
Potentially work.
yeah,
It
I mean, that
maybe
would
we-
help.
Yeah, we hadn't considered that. Based on our feedback here, I was gonna reach back out to the person that was in charge of the HOA and just kind of walk through it with them, and if they think that would be beneficial, we'd certainly do that.
And this, you think access is better the way you have it here? I mean,
I think it is. I think it's less obtrusive to those neighbors going through there, but, and just probably more convenient for both sides, quite honestly.
right.
But there might be a natural progression there where there might be some improvements that are required out on Hunter Mark to make this access work. And when you start
Right.
evaluating the costs of that, there might be reasons why to talk. And so I think just having that generally open, or even re-engaging the county on a right-in, right-out or something, or any of those things, I think, I think that's part of what the traffic study is gonna start to flesh out for us.
Okay.
Not only what are the traffic patterns, but what are some of those costs of like, okay, you could do this, but here's the cost, or here's what you're going to have to do. And that might be painful from a financial perspective. Because anytime you start touching curbs and anything like that, it gets expensive very quickly. And so I think there might be some natural iterations that occur through that transportation process, unless the transportation process comes back and says, hey, you know, if you do this, you can do it really simply, it's easily, it's effective, it works really well. Okay, great, you know, I mean, then we can have that discussion, but I think if there's some hardship that might show up in the proposed access, they do have some alternate ways to attack the access issue, whether it be looking to the south or trying to evaluate and trying to persuade the county to relinquish some access out onto the county highway as well. And so,
And that suggestion would be made during the study?
yeah, I think that they're going to study that access, and I think that then is going to dictate kind of how they proceed from that point.
Or if they
because-
have to go back to the neighborhood, because it's an extension of the neighborhood almost now, the way it
Yeah.
is. It's
Yeah.
residential. You just said there's not a lot of traffic anyway, so I can't imagine that it would be detrimental to the neighborhood that's there, so.
It's interesting to note that your prior concept was a different use. And so coming forward with senior housing, which is an extension of residential, I agree. I'd be curious to see what the neighborhood thinks, because it is, had it been naturally just designed that way, with more housing there, it would just be more neighborhood. I can see if I was living there, if it was like, oh, I'm gonna put a school here, I get that concern. There's a lot of traffic coming and going, certain peak times, so I'd be curious to see how that plays out. That was my only concern. You'd also pick up more parking then. You could, where that dry, you could probably have more front parking if you got rid of the access there.
Yeah, or conserve more of those trees
Yep.
if that access is modified, so.
Okay.
Otherwise, I have no comments. It's a beautiful project.
It does
so.
look nice.
I will just say that the big trees, which are quite a few, are bur oaks, and they're approximately the same age. They're of a group. My concern is when you're tidying up, you leave the young white oaks and red oaks, because when the bur oaks decide to go, it will look extremely empty. But if in 10, 20 years from now, you've kept some of those really young, straight oaks, you will be looking very nice again. So don't just tidy it up so much by taking out too many of the young trees.
Thank you, Commissioner. I guess if we don't have any more comments, I think we should proceed with a motion.
Yeah.
I can make a motion to approve to the City Council the concept plan for Hazel View Senior Cooperative, subject to a total of, it's more than
27.
20,
27.
27, and the traffic study is definitely highlighted on this.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Cross, second by Bowie. Any additional comments?
None?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, and we look forward to seeing the next, the preliminary.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Yep, thank you.
All right, our next order of business, 7B, is to approve the preliminary site plan for China Pagoda at 798 Yellow Brick Road. Liz, thank you, and please proceed.
Thank you again. We are looking at a preliminary site plan application, specifically for 798 Yellow Brick Road, the ultimately new location for China Pagoda. So here's kind of a skewed aerial of the China Pagoda site. It's the former KFC building right on Chaska Boulevard and Yellow Brick Road there that they're planning to reoccupy. So they're specifically asking for a preliminary site plan approval tonight to essentially rehab that existing building and overall site for them to locate the new China Pagoda there. So again, the zoning out there is consistent with the use that they're proposing. So just to reiterate some characteristics of the site that you've already heard. The site is 0.63 acres in size. The former KFC building, it's been vacant for several years now and definitely an eyesore to the community. So it's definitely a plus having someone interested in this building and getting it back up to working order. There's an existing parking lot there that they will continue to use, as well as a drive-through component that was attached with the KFC operation. But with China Pagoda going in there, they have no use for it, so they do plan to remove that function of the building. So a couple items that were brought up during the concept plan approval and how they've addressed it with this preliminary submittal. There was a comment made on kind of the overall building colors that were proposed. They were a little on the darker side. So with this new submittal, they have lightened them up a bit. In terms of the building design, there were some comments made on making sure that the east, south, and even the north facades are being dressed up to some extent since they are the most exposed and heavily viewed facades of the building. So with that, the applicant has kind of focused more of the Class 1 materials and articulation on those facades and incorporating some landscaping as well where they're not able to provide more windows or openings or so forth, which I'll show in a couple other slides. In terms of the parking lot, they are planning to resurface and restripe that parking lot out there, and then removing the drive-through function as well and replacing it with sod and landscaping. There was also an item brought up about incorporating a pedestrian area outside of this building. So with this submittal, they did incorporate a patio area on the east side of the building for people to sit down and eat. So I have the proposed site plan on this slide here. So they are using the existing building out there. So the footprint and location of the parking lot, all of that is going to remain in place as you see it today. I think maybe the major thing that's being eliminated is that glass atrium on the front side of the building. So again, they're removing the drive-through, so you can kind of see the overlay of landscaping here. I'll go to the landscape plan soon. They'll incorporate a trash enclosure piece that will fit in with the building and really start to dress up this site even more. So accesses are going to remain the same. There will be full access into the main parking area on the east side of the building for patrons to use. And then as you come around to the west side, this will be more for employee parking and only be a one-way function. So really, the patrons are only going to be using this parking lot for ingress and egress, and if need be, they can exit the site on the west side as well. So this is the landscape plan that they're proposing. So again, they've kind of highlighted more of the landscape areas on the north side specifically. A little bit on the east side, and then around kind of that prominent corner on the southeast side. The patio area is proposed on the east side, just a little bit north of the kind of frontway entrance there as well. So for us, when we were going through the concept plan, the fact that they're utilizing the existing building footprint also means that they're mainly utilizing the existing program within the building. So the north side of the building is very limited in terms of what you can do with the articulation out there, because it's more of the kitchen area and storage area. So they weren't able to add any more windows to that side. So I think one of the comments that we made during the concept was to dress up this area as much as possible with landscaping and try to put in some materials as well that are consistent with the south and east sides. So with these exhibits, you can start to see kind of how the proposed landscaping will kind of grow and mature into a nice articulative wall in front of that north facade. So the north facade is on this top image here. They'll be doing mostly some coniferous shrubs on the north side, which do grow pretty tall and provide kind of that nice year-round break to the building there. They'll be adding a new overstory tree to that area as well, and some shrubbery to kind of dress up the overall building. The same can be said on the south and east sides, kind of how you see it within this drawing. They'll provide an ornamental tree in the planting island there, as well as some shrubbery around the entrance area to really make it a nice entrance into the site. In terms of the building and the design of it, as we've stated before, because this is a downtown setting, we want to make sure that the building and design is sensitive to that. So with the changes that they've made from the concept, we definitely see that as a favorable change and something that will fit quite well into the fabric that this site is located in. So with the materials that they're proposing, they are proposing brick, which will be a Chaska brick blend to really tie in kind of that history there. Cementitious siding, and then glass. So basically the building is going to be made up mostly of class 1 materials there. They try to optimize the brick wherever they could on those more prominent corners of the building and on the entrance of the building to really provide that quality to those areas. In addition, they're providing a metal panel band that basically wraps around the building to, again, provide a little bit more depth and break up some of the cementitious siding on the building. So in terms of meeting our building materials ordinance, they definitely do in terms of our class 1 requirement. We feel that they are making a significant effort in trying to really dress up this building compared to what it is right now. So they've definitely made strides in that category. They've included a colored rendering as well with the proposed materials at the bottom here to give you a feel of kind of the colors that are proposed for this building. So they'll have more earthy tones as a part of this, with the Chaska brick color coming out in the brick applications, and then more beigey and very light brown colored tones throughout the rest of the building. They'll also be incorporating some gooseneck lighting on the south and east sides to, again, kind of bring in that historic tie to the building. So all in all, we definitely feel like they've done a really good job with the look of the building. So with that, we are asking you to make a motion to recommend approval of the preliminary site plan for 798 Yellow Brick Road for China Pagoda based on the conditions that are listed in your staff report. The applicants are in the audience. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions for you as well.
So quick question, who's the current owner of the property?
China Pagoda is.
China Pagoda
They
is,
are,
okay.
yep.
This is probably for the owner rep. I'm just curious on how large the seating capacity is compared to the present one. Is it going to be?
That'll be a good question for them. I can say that their seating capacity is probably not as large as you would expect it to be, because they're more of a pick up and go type restaurant. But they will be offering seating inside. I just don't know how many seats at this point.
Anything else for Liz?
All right.
All right, if the applicant would like to come on up and maybe field the capacity question and any additional ones?
Sure. Good evening. I am Jeff Hafferman, owner of Inspire Architects, talking on behalf of the owner. The one question that you brought up was the number of seats. We are removing the atrium piece, so we are losing seating space because of that. And we will be under 49 occupants, otherwise it goes to an assembly. So we will still be, it'll still be qualified as a business occupancy.
I got a question.
Sure.
because of the, smaller seating capacity and stuff, was there any thought of keeping the drive-through part of it open? Is that just not?
It's just not something that they have experienced as a selling point
Okay.
For the services that they provide. And it's traditionally, it's not seen very often for Chinese restaurants to have drive-throughs.
Yeah,
Right.
And that's not just here in Chaska, that's pretty
Yeah.
much.
everywhere.
Anywhere, yeah.
How much capacity on the outdoor seating you're proposing?
There's maybe enough space for 2 or 3 tables that are 2 or 3 people each. So not, it's more of a showpiece than anything else.
Maybe people waiting for their order.
Maybe, yeah,
Good place to sit in the sun.
on nice days.
This is not, I don't know how to make this comment, but since I have seen places that they just dump some dirt on top of asphalt and curbing and make it nice and flat, I'm hoping that the old drive-through is ripped up
Yeah,
completely.
it's planned that the asphalt would be removed.
And- okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
Oh, I guess I do have a question. Who's going to maintain this yard? Now, in the past, they haven't had anything to maintain. Are they going to, it is going to be
We haven't
something.
really addressed that, so we will look into that
Yeah,
a
because
little bit more.
it's going to be a little bit that they haven't had a mower and,
Yeah, and I think there's quite a bit of landscaping
Yeah,
that we're
there's a
showing
significant
on the
amount of
plans.
shrubbery.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it will require a little bit of upkeep.
okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Any
Appreciate it.
questions? Yeah.
Being that there's no public, we'll bring it back to us. And any additional comments?
I think it looks great.
Yeah, it looks real good.
Yeah, that's
I
gonna
think
be
it's a
huge improvement.
It's a huge
Long
improvement. Yeah,
We've been all waiting for it.
yeah.
Yes, I really appreciate that you guys took our comments to heart and have modified the colors, and the landscaping plan is exceptional.
It is. I wasn't here for that part, but it looks great.
Yeah, it does.
Anticipated construction start date? I should have asked that when you're up here. Timeline? Yeah, good question.
First off, landscaping was done by a friend of mine, Ben Erickson, design studio in northeast Minneapolis. And as far as start date, probably this summer
Summer?
is the goal,
Okay,
so.
that's great.
It's a little bit tied with our City Square West project.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
figured, yeah. Well,
Very
thank
good.
you.
Yeah,
All right,
that's right.
any other comments before we make a motion? I had a whole bunch of things to say, but you guys already said them, so.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval for the preliminary site and building plan for China Pagoda.
Second?
Motion by Commissioner Bowie, second by Lacy. Any additional comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, good luck. We think it's excellent.
Yeah, it
It's
looks great.
very good. All right, so we'll move on to other business, which is receiving in the meeting minutes from the January 28th and draft minutes of the February 25th city council meetings, receiving in the minutes of the January 28th EDA meeting and the February 11th minutes from the park board. And that being done, I'll bring it for a little around the horn. Anybody have any comments? Commissioner Saylor, we'll start with you.
No, just, I mean, in general, obviously, the snow's gonna be melting here soon, we all hope, and keep the best you can, everybody, to keep the sidewalks clear, the stormwater's clear, so everything can run through, and hopefully we have less flooding than is maybe anticipated.
That would be nice.
Yes, I have a question. Has the park board decided to sell the pocket park at 6th and Maple?
The school district has, because they're the property owner.
They're the property owner of the pocket
Yes.
park.
Yes.
Okay, and, well, do we know what it is zoned as?
Residential. And it's guided as residential.
Well, yeah, it's just gonna be odd lots, odd-shaped lots or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever.
It'll be the same as what's behind it. I mean, it's the same zoning district, so.
Okay. And then I had another question. I was at the Arboretum today, and they were talking about the Carver County traffic study that is being done on Bavaria and 5 and 41 that's coming up. And I'm wondering if we have any input into it, or is it all just basically Chanhassen, Victoria? and the
Mostly
county?
just the county.
Mostly just the county.
Chanhassen really doesn't want anything to do with it because they're not paying for 82nd or anything like that. We don't really want much to do with it because we're not paying for 82nd. And Victoria has some interest because they would like to do 82nd, but they don't own 82nd. I think most of the improvements really on the county side are related to the improvements at Bavaria and 5, and then the section from there over to 41. I think they had some hopes of making it a bigger scope, and that really isn't a desire on our part. I mean, we don't see development happening up in that part of Chaska for a long time, and so for us to invest a lot of time and energy into studying something that isn't going to happen for 20 years isn't really high on our list. We've focused and have provided to the county, the city council has provided to the county its transportation priority list, or the previous council provided the list, which was downtown Chaska, 41, the interchange at 44 and 212, and the intersection of 41 and Angler Boulevard, as that's where we want to spend our time and energy if we're going to be working with the county or others thinking about bigger projects. That's where we want to spend our time and energy because it impacts most of our residents in those projects.
Who knows? Will there be any coordination between when they dig under 41 for the trail and cross over towards Lifetime? Will there be any coordination when we're redoing the juncture of Lyman and 41? I'd hate to see the 41 closed twice, one year and then another year.
I don't know. And I don't really know the existing status of the Lyman project either, which is in jeopardy.
Oh, it's in jeopardy. Okay,
Yeah, I haven't heard anything lately.
okay.
Chanhassen said it didn't want to pay for their share of the project, and they're before the legislature trying to get a grant to supplant their portion of the project currently, so.
So I'm missing, what's the project?
Lyman Boulevard improvement from 41 east to the Chanhassen High School,
Okay.
and so, there's, and then their city engineer just left, so I'm not sure exactly where they stand right now on transportation projects.
The Arboretum is being pushed to get the trail next to 5 done soon, and then that's supposed to go under 41.
Yeah, I don't know.
Don't
We-
know, I
we-
mean, you know,
yeah.
that's again another nebulous thing, but
Yeah, that's far outside of our scope. We've really tried to stay to 82nd as our issues.
thank you.
Yep.
I don't have anything.
All right, Lacy?
Nothing additional.
All right, thank you. And I don't have anything either, except just to remind everybody, there's a lot of water out there. Just because you're driving through a water puddle doesn't mean you may not hit a big pothole, because they are
Wow.
coming out like mad.
Yes.
It's gonna be slick tomorrow too. It's gonna get cold tonight, so.
Since we have obviously many people watching, Kevin, is there is there when you run into some huge potholes that are brand new, are we supposed to call those in?
Yes,
or
absolutely. And, you know,
City Works, or?
call City Hall or Public Works. You know, obviously, not all streets are our streets. Some might be county or state, but we can help the people get to the right party. But you certainly want to be aware of them, because most of them we know about, but they do tend to have a tendency to pop up this time of year without,
I think especially this year,
yeah.
it's gonna be.
We have significant frost in the ground, and it's gonna be challenging for a long time.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
I
Motion
don't have
to
anything
adjourn?
else. Liz? Kevin, Luke?
I've just hit every one of those potholes too already.
Yeah, I am too, so. I guess that being said, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion. Yeah.
All right, and a second?
Second?
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.